The Colorado jurors must determine whether James Holmes, who was legally sane when he opened fire in a Denver movie theater back in 2012, killing 12 people and wounding 70 others. Holmes pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to the 165 charges, including murder. Joining me are UC San Diego clinical psychiatry professor and forensic psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Ornish and Alex Simpson, associate director of the California Innocence Project and professor at California Western School of Law. And Alex, what are the possible decisions that the jury could make in this case?
So, I mean, in one sense, the jury's decision is fairly simple. They can find that James Holmes is sane and that therefore he is, that they could convict him for the crime, or that they can find that he's insane and therefore he is incapable of being convicted for the crime. So those are really the two decisions that the jury's making right now. And
Dr. Ornish, what is the difference between legally insane and mentally ill?
Well, being mentally ill is a psychiatric diagnosis, and that's a psychiatric issue. Being legally sane or insane is more of a legal issue. So there's no question in this case that he suffers from a very severe mental illness, but the issue at hand is whether or not he meets the legal definition of insanity in the state of Colorado.
No, Alex, both the prosecution and defense agreed that Holmes committed the crime. So in this case, what would be making him legally insane? What would qualify for that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to establish that you are insane under a legal definition of insanity. You really have to establish either the person just really could not understand the difference between right and wrong, or was unable to conform his actions to the law. And so when you're talking about legal insanity, somebody can be profoundly mentally ill but still not fit that very narrow legal definition of insanity.
And each state has their own criteria for that?
That's correct. It depends on the state what particular piece of evidence you'd need to establish that the person's insane. But it's really a very small portion of people.
And what happens if James Holmes is found not guilty by reason of insanity in the legal front? What happens to him then?
At that point, then he would be committed to a mental institution until he is found to be sane, legally sane. But realistically, that means that he would most likely be in a mental institution for the rest of his life.
So not likely to get out, even if he was, quote, became better.
That's correct. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, Dr. Ornish. So what kind of treatment would James Holmes have if he was convicted and actually landed in jail instead?
Well, in jail, he would still be receiving psychiatric treatment. So, unfortunately, the criminal justice system is one of the largest providers of psychiatric treatment in the country these days. So he'd receive primarily antipsychotic, psychotropic medications. He would receive medical treatment. He would receive visits with psychiatrists periodically. And that would be most likely the nature of his treatment if in jail.
And if he was found sane, though, and he was asked for the death penalty, let me start with you, Dr. Ornish. If it was then sought the death penalty, he's found sane, the jurors then have to decide on, it's decided he's going to face the death penalty. What does that do to the process they're going through right now and trying to decide whether he was legally sane or insane at the time of the crime?
In terms of the death penalty, if he is found sane, then there would be a penalty phase, and clearly his mental illness would be used by the defense as a mitigant to argue that he should not be given the death penalty because through no fault of his own he suffers from this severe mental illness.
Yeah, but Alex, that's kind of a slippery slope, right? If he was found to be sane at the time, are you allowed to execute mentally ill people?
Well, you're certainly not allowed to execute mentally ill people, and that's what the penalty phase would have to go to, at least to a certain extent. Really what you're talking about, if he's found sane, at least for the guilt phase, that he should be convicted for this crime, then really what you're talking about for sentencing is, should we lock this person up for the rest of his life, or should we sentence him to death? And that's a hard decision to make.
Yes, I just want to end on this briefly, though. Is it very common to have people actually be successful in court on a a legally insane defense?
It's fewer than 1% of cases actually even raise this defense. Of those, maybe 25% are successful, quote unquote successful about that. So it's a very, very small number of people who are actually found not guilty by reason of insanity.
All right, Alex Simpson and Dr. Stephen Ornish, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.